Greetings everyone, Cell here. Subscribe to this perfect channel and follow Geekdom on the social media platforms. That will be all.
For many decades, Dragon Ball fans believed that the Cell Saga was supposed to be the original ending of the Dragon Ball story, both in the manga and with Dragon Ball Z. But did Toriyama actually intend to end the series with the defeat of Cell, with Goku moving on to the afterlife, and with Gohan being proclaimed the new hero of Earth? On this edition of Dragon Ball Mythbusters, we look into this big misconception that's been going on for several years, and we do what we do best: debunk the hell out of it.
この番組はご覧のスポンサーの提供でお送りします。
Now, the idea of the story of Dragon Ball ending at the end of the Cell games actually makes a lot of sense from a narrative perspective. So if you're out there and you're a fan of Dragon Ball and you believe that this was the truth and that Toriyama really wanted to end it here, I can't really blame you, because it is probably the best, or one of the best places that the story could have actually ended and given us a satisfying conclusion to several character arcs that were built up throughout the series. Obviously, the story of Dragon Ball is the story of the life of Goku, from when he's a little boy to him growing up, becoming a martial artist, saving the world, then finding out that he's actually not even an Earthling, and then moving on from there and facing the Emperor of the Universe, and finally, the end of his story culminates with him passing the proverbial torch to his son Gohan, who was able to defeat the seemingly invincible Super Perfect Cell and save the entire world from disaster. From the very beginning of the Dragon Ball Z portion of the story, Gohan had always been built up to be this eventual new hero, from his latent power showcase against characters like Raditz and Frieza and Vegeta, to his quickly adapting and learning even better than his own father on how to become an expert in combat. So it's no wonder that Goku had his own son there as the secret weapon to use against Cell. But like I said, the story of Dragon Ball is the story of Goku, and the idea of Goku sacrificing his life at the end of all this to save the Earth once again, and then when the time came to resurrect him to come back like they've done so many other times throughout the series, and Goku refusing to do it, to me is a more than perfect way to end the series. Son Goku displayed an incredible amount of maturity, selflessness, and self-awareness by telling his own friends that even though I'm gonna miss you, the reality is that all of these problems that came to the planet Earth is his fault, and in a roundabout way it sort of is indirectly his fault. He was sent there as a baby. He's the reason that Raditz even showed up. He is the reason that the androids were even created. So in many ways there is truth to what he said. However, Demon King Piccolo would have probably still been released anyways, so Goku did do a lot of good while he was there. But still, Goku's self-reflection of his impact on these events, I think, is overlooked by a lot of fans. Not to mention that during this entire arc, you had Trunks coming back. He finally got to meet his father. He got to meet the legendary Son Goku and his trainer Gohan before going back to the future and freeing the future and bringing peace to that timeline, thanks to his interactions with, of course, our characters in the present. And then with Vegeta himself, at the end of the Cell Saga, Vegeta claims he will never fight again. Yeah, right. But he said he would never fight again. And now that Goku was dead, he would have no real reason to fight again, because that was, of course, his rival. So to me, if I'm brutally honest, even though I do enjoy several aspects of the Buu arc, it's hard to argue that if Toriyama chose to end the story right here at Cell, with Goku dead, Gohan being the savior of Earth, the hero to protect the Earth from whoever else would come to attack it, and Trunks and Vegeta closing their character arcs, you really can't say that's a bad ending. In some ways, that ending may be even more satisfactory than anything, really. But of course, the problem lies in the fact that Goku, of course, is dead, and if you're a fan of Dragon Ball, you probably like Goku. But a hero's sacrifice to end a story is one that's been done several times throughout history, so Goku doing it is really no different, especially with the fact that this time he is choosing to not come back. So Toriyama ending the story of Dragon Ball here, narratively, does indeed make sense if you ask me. And I know a lot of fans who actually don't like the Buu arc very much, and they think that it should have ended right here. So there is that. But the reality is that Toriyama never, ever planned on ending the series here at the Cell arc. And how do we know that? Because, well, he's never said it. Toriyama has never said in any interview ever, or even hinted, that he was going to end the series at Cell. There are other points in the series where he did sort of talk about this, but Cell is not one of them, despite how perfect the ending might seem to some people. When the Cell arc was in publication and when the series was on television, Dragon Ball was still cooking. Toriyama was still producing a story that people wanted to see week after week. But it's not about money. Toriyama did not continue because of money, because Toriyama was already filthy rich before he even started Dragon Ball. So just imagine how many stacks this dude had during this time in 1993, 1994, when Dragon Ball had already had several movies, several TV episodes, tons of video games. The dude was already filthy rich. It's not about money to Toriyama at all when it comes to this story. It's about, well, him wanting to tell a story. In fact, Toriyama himself confirmed this in an interview taken from the Shenlong Times #2 pamphlet, where he states that at the time it began to be more fun to think about the story than to even draw pictures. So even though Toriyama may have been an artist at heart, this was a time when he was writing Dragon Ball that he really enjoyed writing the story of what was the Cell Saga. The only gap in between the end of the Cell Saga and the start of the Buu Saga, with of course the Great Saiyaman storyline, was only about 2 weeks, and that's because Jump Magazine itself took a break for 1 week. So that's the reason why there was that short break. But Toriyama took no vacations here. He just continued telling his story right into the Buu Saga and the 7-year time skip. So that unquestionably proves that even though the Cell Saga would have been a great place to end the story, it was not Toriyama's intention to end it there. However, what I think may have confused more people has to do with what happened with Dragon Ball Kai. So the original run of Dragon Ball Kai, which began in 2009, did end with the Cell Saga, and in Japan it was promoted as being a more truer version to Toriyama's manga, an original cut closer to Toriyama's vision, and when it came out in the States, the Funimation packaging said, no filler. And that's complete false advertising. I'm going to be real with you on this one, because Dragon Ball Kai does have filler. Dragon Ball Kai has significantly less filler than Dragon Ball Z, but all they really did with Kai is take Dragon Ball Z footage, cut it up, enhance it, remove some of the filler, change the music, and redub the series. That's pretty much what Dragon Ball Kai was. That's what it is. And it wasn't like they redid everything from scratch, so there were certain filler aspects of the anime they couldn't just remove because it had to be there to tell the story in the anime version of the events. So Dragon Ball Kai is closer to the manga, but it's nowhere near being a perfect panel for panel adaptation or even close to it, but it did cut a lot of the filler, but not all of it. So Dragon Ball Kai in its original run ended with the Cell Saga, and thus people thought, well, okay, then that means that it's closer to Toriyama's vision. Well, people who say that never read the manga, because there's a Buu Saga in the manga. And the real story is that the only reason why Kai ended in the Cell Saga is because Dragon Ball Kai was not pulling in the ratings that Fuji TV expected them to pull in. It was rapidly decreasing in popularity, probably because people didn't really care to watch the same series over again they had already seen when they were younger, and as a result of that, Kai was cut short. But even though Fuji TV canceled them in Japan, that didn't mean that Kai actually ended, because Toei Animation went ahead and produced Dragon Ball Kai the final chapters for international distribution to North America, France, and several other countries, and this would be the Buu arc of Kai. It was originally intended to be just for international audiences, but what wound up happening in Japan was Dragon Ball Kai's replacement, Toriko, wound up doing even worse ratings than Dragon Ball Kai, so they decided to go ahead and air a Japanese cut of Dragon Ball Kai, which was the Buu Saga, and thus we have a completed version of Dragon Ball Kai when they adapted Dragon Ball Z. But remember, Kai never adapted the pre-Dragon Ball Z stuff, like the Kid Goku stuff all the way to the tournament where he fights Piccolo. That was never adapted into Kai. It was never recut into Kai, and that certainly the first several volumes of Toriyama's manga. So you can't even say that they were trying to be an exact mirror image of the manga if they cut out that entire chunk of the series. And in Japan, it was billed as Dragon Ball Kai, not Dragon Ball Z Kai. So they could have put it in there, but they chose to start with Z, and that's pretty much how it went. But understand that Dragon Ball Kai's original run ending at Cell had absolutely no bearing at all on anything Toriyama was planning with the manga or with the Dragon Ball Z anime. It was entirely because of ratings. So no matter which way you slice it, to conclude, Toriyama never intended to end the Dragon Ball series at Cell. But if you're new to the channel, you may not have seen my previous debunk where I debunked that disgusting rumor about how Toriyama wanted to make Gohan the main character, but the fans, pressured him out of it. That was the first edition of Dragon Ball Mythbusters. I will leave a link to that right here at the end of the video, so you definitely got to watch that, because that's one of the biggest lies in the history of the fandom, even bigger than this one. So there you go. Thank you so much. Check out the video and have a great rest of your day.